Fly Me to the Moon, Apollo era rom-com cum conspiracy drama starring Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, and with but Woody Harrelson. Directed by TV graduate Greg Berlanti, who made Love, Simon, and written by Rose Gilroy, who's the daughter of Rene Russo and Tony Gilroy. So the film was apparently originally going to be directed by Jason Bateman with Chris Evans as the male lead. Anyway, so Johansson is Kelly Jones. She is an advertising person in the 60s. Her talent is she can sell anything. And a very early scene has her pitching a Mustang ad that she promises will have wives telling their husbands, honey, I really wish you would buy a Mustang. So Woody Harrelson is then Mo, who is this shady government agent who turns up and says, right, you're the best seller in the world. I need you to sell the moon and to make NASA sexy because they've got a mandate to put a man on the moon after Kennedy said we'll do it, in this decade.
Right.
But no one's excited. Everyone thinks there's better things that you could be doing with the money. So she's sent to Cape Canaveral, where Channing Tatum's Cole Davis is the launch captain. He's super skeptical about her mission, which includes NASA endorsed watches. Here's a clip.
A watch ad. That's your big idea?
Ready? Toothpaste. Tang. The energy breakfast drink chosen for Apollo astronauts on their trip to the moon.
Moon coupons.
But my personal favorite? Fruit of the Loom, right? The guys gotta wear something under those big suits, don't they?
NASA, like Fruit of the Loom. Look, I am not turning this ship into a flying billboard, no matter how much you want it to happen. And, by the way, we don't have time to test all this before liftoff.
We don't have to send any of this up into space as long as we say it went.
Oh, so you're gonna lie?
It's called selling. We're not lying to the customer. We're changing the way they think.
No, it's called lying.
So is it advertising or is it lying or is it selling? So the difference between selling and lying becomes more pronounced when Mo tells Kelly that the government are scared that something will go wrong with the mission, and they know that there are meant to be live pictures coming back. And so he says to her, what we want you to do is we want you to fake a moon landing because this is not about the race into space. This is about America beating Russia on TV. She doesn't want to do it. She says it's ridiculous. I don't want it. But he's got the goods on her shady past. So she has no choice, even when Channing Tatum's character, who she can't tell about it because you can't tell anybody about it, sort of becomes a potential love interest. Now, here's the interesting thing. A friend of mine took issue with this film, a fellow critic, and he said he thought it was actually offensive. And I said, why? He said, well, firstly, her character is a salesperson who will sell anything, napalm doesn't make any difference. And the film seems to find that sympathetic. And the second thing is it's irresponsible because it suggests to people that the moon landing might have been faked. And I said, but it's a fiction film. He said, but it begins with her saying, this is my story. And anyway, people thought Capricorn 1 was real. So the first thing to say is, if you, people are crazy. If you think the moon landings are fake, or you think 5G gives you cancer, or you think that vaccines aren't safe, you are a tin hat wearing lunatic. Please find yourself another podcast. We don't want you here. It's just, okay, we landed on the moon. That's what happened. However, I don't share that reservation. This is a very, very fine critic, this friend of mine. I think this is kind of a cute comedy that it comes on more like a sort of playful episode of The X-Files. I mean, The X-Files was always basically a rom-com with aliens anyway. But what the film is about to me is about the difference between things being fake and things being real, which obviously in the current news cycle is a story. There's Jim Rash has fun as the director who is brought in to shoot the fake, and they get to make the joke after he's impossible about the joke about, we should have got Stanley Kubrick, which if you've seen Room 237, you know all about the stuff about, Stanley Kubrick was brought in to fake the moon landings, which of course he wasn't because that's nonsense as well. Eye-catching design, light and frothy, no bad thing. And just to be absolutely clear, the film does not suggest in any way, shape or form that the moon landings were faked because they weren't. But what it does do is it plays with the idea that people have it in their heads that the moon landings were faked because people are basically mad. And you can sell them any idea at all, including the earth is flat. Donald Trump is currently president of the United States. The Da Vinci Code is based on something real, all that sort of nonsense. So it was really interesting to have a conversation with somebody who was cross at a film for not being more cross at a character who's essentially working for the Nixon administration. But And there you
Was
go.
he hoping for some kind of expose, and sort of like a clearer statement of the fact that
Yes, I
that's
think
all
I,
nonsense?
I think what he wanted was an absolutely clear statement that this isn't a real story. This didn't happen. I mean, NASA are on board with the film. NASA have helped and cooperated with it, so they clearly don't think that's the case. I thought it was a kind of fun, breezy rom com. I mean, I quite like all that. I quite like all that ooga booga stuff because I think it's funny, and and it's
How are you defining ooga booga?
well, we didn't land on the moon. Yes, we did.
Oh, right.
You know,
Okay. Yeah. And it's always worth going to YouTube and watching Buzz Aldrin
hitting
the
that
guy
guy. It's
who
just
pursued
it's
was
so
pursuing him,
fabulous.
saying it was fake, And after a while, you kind of, and I'm kind of, obviously hitting people is never, it's never a good idea. But
Except in this case, it was.
the one thing that has obviously dominated, that the reason why we all know about Buzz Aldrin is because he went to the moon with Neil
Yeah.
Armstrong
Yeah.
and Michael Collins.
Yeah.
And have people going around telling you that it didn't happen must be the most infuriating thing in the world.
But if you've never seen that clip, look it up on YouTube, because the best thing is that he's a man of a certain age. And the guy who's going around shouting, you lied, you didn't go to the moon. And seeing a man of a certain age, you're thinking, I'm sorry, I went to the moon and back. I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
Just lamping him is just, as you say, violence is never justified unless you went to the moon and back and were being followed by some tin hat wearing nitwit. Hello to all our QAnon listeners. Go find another podcast. As I said, to be absolutely clear, Fly Me to the Moon is not about that.
Right.
Fly Me to the Moon is about the fact that people will buy anything if Scarlett Johansson's trying to sell it to them.
The first time I heard about the Buzz Aldrin clip was Professor Brian Cox. There was back in the day when Chris Evans was on Radio 2 Breakfast, and he had loads of guests on a Friday, and they had this thing where all the guests asked each other a question. And Phil Collins was on at the same. There were other guests as well. And Phil Collins' question to Professor Brian Cox was whether the moon landings happened. And I'm paraphrasing here. Apologies, Prof, if I've got this wrong, but he basically referred Phil Collins to that clip where
Brilliant.
Buzz Aldrin thumps the person who
Brilliant.
does it. You're thinking, enough already.
Yeah,
enough already. Anyway, very good. Okay, well, that sounds quite charming.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it. I mean, I thought it was kind of sweet and charming. And obviously, I love the design. I just love everything about the design.
Is it Kafkaesque surreal?
No.
Point? Okay,
No,
excellent. In which
no
case
violent deaths. Well, I mean, except for
Yes.
historically violent deaths that occurred during the Apollo project, but that's, we all know about that anyway. So
Okay, we've moved on from that.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And that's called Fly Me
Fly Me to the Moon.
Very good.